June 4, 1942, 10:52 a.m. Japanese carrier Hiru, 150 miles northwest of Midway. Lieutenant Mio Kobayashi's hand shook as he marked spots on his navigation map, his pencil hanging over locations that made no sense. Through the ready room window, he could see Admiral Yamaguchi Tamon looking at spy photos with an expression of deep shock. It wasn't anger or confusion, but the slow understanding that something basic had gone terribly wrong. Impossible. We were sure she sank at Coral Sea. I saw her burning, leaning, left for lost. The picture showed an American carrier sending its planes into the air. Its unique tower shape was clear to see even in the fuzzy image. Before we dive in, tell us in the comments where you're tuning in from. And if stories of heroes appearing in the darkest hour thrill you, then hit subscribe, because we're just getting started. 3 carriers. The Americans had 3 carriers at Midway, not 2. The sure thing of their victory, 4 Japanese carriers against 2 American, had just fallen apart. In the Coral Sea, 27 days before, Japanese pilots had left this very same carrier badly hurt, leaking oil and dead in the water. Admiral Takagi had told Tokyo, "Yorktown-class carrier taken out." The Naval Command had removed her from their plans. But here she was, USS Yorktown, very much alive, her planes already diving on the Japanese fleet. Through the speaker, Kobayashi could hear the worry spreading through the Hiru like a wildfire. 3 carriers meant 230 American planes, not 150. 3 carriers meant their trap had been turned on them. 3 carriers meant everything. What Imperial Navy intelligence had told them about American repair skills was terribly wrong. The puzzle, the impossible sight of Yorktown at Midway, broke the basic Japanese belief about what was industrially possible. In the Imperial Navy's view, a proper repair of battle damage needed careful work, months of effort, and honor-bound skill. A carrier with a 551-pound bomb hole through 5 decks, with burst fuel tanks and ruined rooms, would need 90 days at the very least in the best naval yard. The math had been undeniable. Enterprise and Hornet were the only working American carriers in the Pacific. Lexington was at the bottom of the Coral Sea. Saratoga was still being fixed from torpedo damage. The new Essex-class carriers wouldn't be ready until 1943. Japanese intelligence had confirmed this over and over, yet math meant nothing to the SBD Dauntless dive bombers now diving down toward Japanese flight decks. As Admiral Nagumo's staff officers recalculated in a panic, one truth came out. They had based Operation MI completely on the belief that the Americans could not do what they had clearly done. The Coral Sea Trick. May 8, 1942. Coral Sea, 500 miles northeast of Australia. The attack had been flawless. 18 Type 99. Dive bombers from carriers Shokaku and Zuikaku found USS Yorktown coming out of a rainstorm. Lieutenant Commander Kakuichi Takahashi, who led the attack, watched his pilots get a direct hit near the tower. The 250-kilo bomb went through the flight deck and blew up 5 decks down. The explosion could be seen from 10,000 feet. Yorktown appeared, leaving a 10-mile oil slick, low in the water, with fires visible through holes in her side. Her speed dropped to what Japanese watchers figured was 6 knots. Pilots returning to the Japanese carriers said she was finished, leaning so badly that saving planes was impossible. Pictures showed destroyers moving in to rescue the crew. Admiral Takagi Teo sent a radio message to the main fleet headquarters. 2 American carriers confirmed sunk. Yorktown and Lexington taken out, the Emperor was told. Naval planners in Kure removed Yorktown from their list of active ships. In their plans for the Midway attack, she was gone. Captain Elliot Buckmaster, Yorktown's commanding officer, had different ideas. As his ship slowly moved away at 20 knots, not the 6 knots the Japanese watchers reported, his damage control crews worked their first miracle. The bomb had killed 66 men right away, ruined 6 rooms, destroyed elevator equipment, and burst fuel tanks along 30 sections. By all standards of naval work, Yorktown needed months in a dry dock. The trip home, first of the impossible jobs, May 8th to 27th, 1942, Coral Sea to Pearl Harbor. The 300-mile journey showed the first sign of the American way of doing things. While Yorktown's damage was bad, Her crew tackled repairs with a way of thinking the Japanese didn't understand. Make it work, make it fast, make it fight. Chief Carpenter Boyd Mackenzie ignored the repair manuals. Instead of waiting to correctly replace broken support beams, a dry dock job, he just welded steel plates over them, making ugly but working patches. The engine rooms had their own story. The bomb had wrecked the No. 2 elevator equipment and damaged 3 boiler rooms. Engineers rebuilt systems using parts taken from the ship's own machine shop, made new pieces from sheet metal, and put together makeshift equipment meant for other things. As Yorktown kept up 20 knots, even with damage that should have slowed her to 12, American submarines reported her location to Pearl Harbor. Japanese intelligence picked up these coded messages but used their own standards, thinking damaged vessel moving meant 5 to 8 knots. They figured she wouldn't get to Pearl Harbor until mid-June, much too late for any fixes before the Midway attack planned for June 4th. Pearl Harbor, the impossible happens. May 27th, 1942. 1 p.m., Pearl Harbor Naval Base. Yorktown's arrival was a troubling view. The 10-mile oil slick could be seen from Diamond Head. She leaned to the side, smoke drifting from her temporary patches. Rear Admiral Aubrey Fitch, who had seen the damage up close, had sent his opinion. 90 days minimum needed for battle readiness. But Pearl Harbor in May 1942 had changed from a peaceful naval station into something never seen before. A forward repair base working on the edge of what was possible. Saving the battleships from December 7th had created a team that thought in hours, not months. Admiral Chester Nimitz met Yorktown at the dock. Unlike Japanese admirals who led from battleships hundreds of miles away, Nimitz walked through oily water in dry dock No. 1, checking the damage himself while the dock was still filling. His pants soaked, hands black with oil, he turned to Captain Claude Gillette, the yard boss, and Lieutenant Commander H.J. Finster, the hull repair expert. "We must have this ship back in 3 days." The silence that came after seemed to last forever. Finster finally swallowed and said, "Yes, sir. Station hypo, the intelligence need." The 3-day deadline wasn't random. In the basement of Building 1, just 400 yards from the dry dock, Commander Joseph Rochefort's station hypo had broken JN-25, the Japanese Naval Operations Code. They knew AF meant Midway. They knew the attack date, June 4th. They knew the Japanese battle plan, 4 carriers of the 1st Air Fleet. Most importantly, they knew the Japanese expected to fight only Enterprise and Hornet. The Japanese believed Yorktown was gone. This information turned Yorktown's repair from just urgent to a matter of survival. Without her, the Americans would face 4-2 odds. With her, 3-4, still not good, but possible. The 72-hour marathon, May 28th, 5:30 a.m., dry dock No. 1. Before the dock was fully empty while water was still swirling ankle-deep, 1,400 workers rushed onto Yorktown. They came from every shop on the base: welders, electricians, shipfitters, machinists, pipe fitters, sheet metal workers. Many had worked all night on other ships. They would work for 72 hours straight. The repair went against Japanese industrial thinking. Instead of careful planning and chain-of-command approvals, the work was an organized mess. Bosses made choices on the spot. Workers crossed job lines. The only rule was make her fight. The methods used would have shocked Japanese naval designers. The bomb damage. The 551-pound bomb had caused ruin from the flight deck down through 5 levels. The Japanese way would be to cut away bent steel, make new sections, and rebuild each deck. Time needed 30 days. Pearl Harbor's fix: leave the bent structure in place. Weld huge plates over everything. Support weak spots with wooden beams from building sites. Time, 18 hours. The fuel tanks, near misses, had burst tanks along 30 sections, dirtying the fuel. Japanese procedure required draining, cleaning, checking, and individual repair. Time, 2 weeks. American fix: pump out the dirty fuel. Seal leaks with quick hardening cement made for runway repair. Weld plates over everything. Ignore tanks too broken for a quick fix. Seal them up for good. Time, 11 hours. The machinery. 3 boiler rooms were damaged. Superheat power was cut by 70%. Top speed was now 27 knots instead of 32.5. Japanese standards called for a full replacement. Pearl Harbor's method: ignore the superheaters completely. Accept the lower speed. Focus on basic operation. Time, 14 hours. The worker's reality. Electrician Lewis Walters, 21 years old, later remembered, "We didn't have time for proper repairs. We ran cables over decks instead of through pipes. We welded plates over holes instead of replacing broken parts. Everything was temporary, ugly, but it worked." The numbers of the repair: 20 tons of steel plate welded, 35 miles of electrical cable laid, 400 tons of dirty fuel pumped out, 3 ruined rooms sealed off. The constant arc welding used so much power it caused rolling blackouts across Oahu. Workers ate while they welded, slept in 15-minute breaks against walls. When welding used so much electricity that hospitals lost power, the people of Oahu accepted the blackouts without complaint. When the yard needed wood, building companies sent it without any paperwork. The hull repairs went against all naval design rules. Leaking seams were stuffed with wood, covered with steel plates, and welded shut, making what one engineer called a metal scab. Electrical fixes gave up all attempts at doing things by the book. Cables were laid along decks through doorways and across ceilings. The departure, May 30th, 1942. 9 a.m. Yorktown left with shipyard workers still on board, still making repairs as she picked up speed. These workers would leave the ship as she cleared the harbor. The air group on her flight deck was itself proof of being able to change. Bombing Squadron 3 from USS Saratoga. Torpedo Squadron 3 put together from survivors. Fighting Squadron 3, mixing pilots from 3 different squadrons who had never flown together. As Yorktown left Pearl Harbor, the workers who had done the impossible lined the docks. Chief Hull Technician Finster would later say, "We sent her out looking like a boxer who'd been patched up between rounds. She wasn't pretty, but she could still throw punches." Point Luck meeting, June 2nd, 1942, 325 miles northeast of Midway. When Yorktown met Enterprise and Hornet at Point Luck, the other carriers' crews were amazed. Commander W.D.E. McCluskey, Enterprise's air group leader, later wrote, "We knew Yorktown had been damaged at Coral Sea. We thought maybe she'd limp in as a backup. Instead, she was launching planes, running flight operations, looking ready for a fight." Admiral Frank Jack Fletcher, in command from Yorktown, knew something vital. Yorktown's presence wasn't just about more planes. It was about breaking what the Japanese believed. In his final meeting, Fletcher told his staff, "The Japanese have planned this operation for months. Every detail figured for fighting 2 carriers. When our planes show up over their fleet, that certainty will die. Japanese confidence." Aboard the flagship Akagi, Admiral Nagumo Chuichi made final preparations with total certainty. 4 carriers, Akagi, Kaga, Soryu, Hiryu, with 248 planes against 2 American carriers with 150 planes. Veterans of Pearl Harbor against Americans who had not yet won a carrier fight. Captain Minoru Genda, Nagumo's air operations officer, had planned for every possibility. Even if the Americans surprised them, the better Japanese pilots and more planes would win. The only thing that could change the outcome was a 3rd American carrier, and intelligence said that was impossible. Yorktown was gone. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, who had led the Pearl Harbor attack, was sick with appendicitis, but stayed on as an observer. Years later, he would write, "Our whole plan was built on information that the Americans had 2 carriers. Not about 2, not maybe 3, exactly 2. If that was wrong, everything was wrong." June 4th, the shock. 4:30 a.m., Japanese carriers sent 108 planes to attack Midway. The morning started as planned. Nagumo kept 108 planes in reserve for the American fleet, sure of his trap. 7:10 a.m., a Japanese scout plane reports, "American carrier spotted." 1 carrier was expected. Nagumo ordered his reserve planes rearmed with torpedoes for a ship attack. Then confusion. The scout reported, "Appears to be 2 carriers." Still within his plans. 8:20 a.m., Torpedo Squadron 8 from Hornet attacks. Lieutenant Commander John Waldron led 15 TBD Devastators against the Japanese fleet without fighter cover. All 15 were shot down. Only Ensign George Gay made it out alive. But Waldron's sacrifice pulled the Japanese fighter planes down to sea level. 8:40 a.m., Torpedo Squadron 6 from Enterprise attacks. 10 of 14 Devastators were shot down. No hits, but again, the defending Zeros were pulled down low. 9:15 a.m., Torpedo Squadron 3 from Yorktown attacks. This was the moment of the shocking discovery. As 12 more devastators started their runs, Japanese lookouts counted the attacking planes. Too many? The math was wrong. There were 3 American carriers, not 2. On the Hiryu's bridge, Admiral Yamaguchi quickly calculated. 3 carriers changed everything. But before new orders could be given, before the Japanese could react, the dive bombers showed up. 10:22 a.m. The turning point. Lieutenant Commander Maxwell Leslie, leading Yorktown's Bombing Squadron 3, had gotten lost, then found the Japanese by following a destroyer's trail in the water. His 17 SBD Dauntlesses arrived over the Japanese fleet at the same moment as Enterprise's bombers, not by plan, but by a lucky accident from Yorktown's slow launch because of her broken boilers. From 14,000 feet, Leslie looked down at 4 Japanese carriers with flight decks full of armed and fueled planes. Their fighter planes were down at sea level. Within 6 minutes, 3 Japanese carriers were on fire. Soryu, hit by 3 bombs from Leslie's squadron, blew up in flames, visible for 50 miles. Japanese answer, attacking the Ghost. Admiral Yamaguchi on the Hiryu faced impossible odds, 3 American carriers against his 1 remaining ship. But he sent 18 dive bombers and 6 fighters against the closest American carrier, Yorktown. As the attack neared, Flight Leader Lieutenant Mio Kobayashi looked at the carrier through his binoculars and felt his world turn upside down. The tower shape, the flight deck layout. This was Yorktown, the ship they had sunk at Coral Sea. 12:05 p.m. 3 bombs hit Yorktown, starting fires and bursting steam pipes. The ship stopped dead in the water. For the second time in 27 days, Japanese pilots left Yorktown burning and looking finished. But even as she burned, Yorktown had already changed everything. Her morning attack had sunk the Soryu. By taking the Hiryu's attack, she protected Enterprise and Hornet for the return attack that would sink the Hiryu 4 hours later. Damage control greatness. Captain Buckmaster ordered a damage check. The Pearl Harbor fixes, ugly and made up on the spot, were holding. The welded plates hadn't broken. Chief Engineer John F. Delaney reported, "The Japanese bombs hurt us, but the Pearl Harbor repairs are strong. Give me 2 hours." Within an hour, 3 boilers were running again, fires were under control, and pumping water to the other side had lessened the lean. By 1:40 p.m., Yorktown was moving at 19 knots and refueling fighters, looking so recovered that when Hiryu's second attack came at 2:30 p.m., the pilots thought they were attacking a different, undamaged carrier. The second attack confusion. 2:30 p.m., Lieutenant Tominaga Joichi, leading 5 torpedo bombers, all the Hiryu had left, expected to find a burning Yorktown. Instead, he found a carrier moving and launching fighters. His confused message to the Hiryu suggested they were attacking a second carrier, making the Japanese staff think there might be 4 American carriers there. While Tominaga's torpedoes would finally sink Yorktown, the confusion stopped a coordinated defense before Enterprise's dive bombers found and sank the Hiryu at 5 p.m. The final act. June 6, 1:31 p.m. Japanese submarine I-168, led by Lieutenant Commander Yahachi Tanabe, found Yorktown being towed. Tanabe fired 4 torpedoes. 2 hit Yorktown, 1 hit the destroyer USS Hammond next to her. As Yorktown rolled over on June 7th, Tanabe wrote in his log, "Sank American carrier, probably Saratoga." Even as she died, Yorktown caused confusion. The Japanese never fully realized that the carrier at Midway was the same one they thought they had sunk at Coral Sea. The hard numbers, the figures, tell the story. Yorktown's repair. Japanese guess for similar damage, 90 to 120 days. American peacetime standard, 30 to 45 days. Actual time it took, 72 hours. Workers on the job were 400 around the clock. Fighting ability reached, 85%. Battle result. Japanese belief, 4 carriers versus 2 equals a sure win. Real situation, 4 carriers versus 3 equals a close match. Outcome, 4 Japanese carriers sunk, 1 American. Strategic impact, Soryu was for sure sunk by Yorktown's planes. 2 Japanese attacks were soaked up that would have hit Enterprise or Hornet. 75 Japanese planes were destroyed attacking Yorktown. The Japanese ability to attack was ended for good. The witnesses speak. Years later, those who were there would think about what Yorktown's presence meant. Commander Mitsuo Fuchida, Japanese. The appearance of a third carrier broke our planning. Every calculation, every possible situation, was based on 2 carriers. When lookouts reported more torpedo planes than 2 carriers could send, we knew something was terribly wrong. By the time we understood, 3 of our carriers were on fire. Aviation machinist Tom Cheek, USS Enterprise. When we saw Yorktown at Point Luck, grown men actually cheered. We knew she'd been hurt bad at Coral Sea, but there she was, patched up like a prize fighter, ready for another round. Electrician Wayne Morrison, Pearl Harbor. When we heard she'd helped sink 3 Japanese carriers before getting hit, the whole yard went quiet. Then someone started clapping. Soon, 10,000 workers were applauding. Those 3 days meant something, Japanese understanding. The Japanese slowly figured out what had happened, but full understanding took years. Admiral Matome Ugaki, Yamamoto's chief of staff, wrote in his diary, "The appearance of Yorktown at Midway was not luck. It was preparation. Somehow the Americans knew our plans. The 3-day repair was not a miracle. It was a reaction to what they knew." In 1962, Lieutenant Commander Tanabe visited Pearl Harbor. Shown dry dock number 1 where Yorktown was fixed, he stood quiet for long minutes, then said, "Now I understand. We were not fighting a nation. We were fighting an idea that anything is possible if you work hard enough. We believed in spirit over things. Americans believed in things used in the right way." Admiral Shigeru Fukudome in his memoirs. Yorktown taught us the war was lost before it started. Any nation that could fix such damage in 3 days could not be beaten by any nation that needed 3 months. It was simple math, the repair mindset. Yorktown's repair showed basic differences in thinking. Japanese mindset: perfection, skill, honor in the details. Damaged ships must be made new again completely. Time was less important than quality. American mindset: function, speed, change. Damaged ships need to fight, not look pretty. Time is everything. This difference went beyond fixing ships. Japan built beautiful planes, perfectly made, built by hand. America built good enough planes by the thousands, each one the same, fixable with whatever was on hand. The intelligence win. Station Hypo's code breaking made Yorktown's repair urgent, but the repair made the intelligence useful. Without Yorktown, Admirals Nimitz and Fletcher might not have risked a fight. With her, the odds became acceptable. Commander Rochefort later said, "We could read their mail, but reading it meant nothing if we couldn't act on it." Yorktown gave us the power to act. Those shipyard workers were as important as any codebreaker. The lasting effect. Yorktown's repair completely changed naval damage control rules. Speed over perfection became the standard. Function over looks became the rule. New ideas over old procedures became the practice. The Yorktown Standard was born. Any ship that floats can be saved. The repair also showed America's industrial strength to the world. The workers who fixed Yorktown in 72 hours stood for the workers who would build Liberty ships in 4 days, B-24 bombers in 63 minutes, and in the end, the atomic bomb in 3 years post-war credit. In 1985, surviving Pearl Harbor workers met with Yorktown veterans in Hawaii for the battle's anniversary. Lewis Walters, the electrician who had laid cables for 72 hours, met Tom Leah, a gunner whose battle station relied on those cables. "Your wiring saved my life," Leah said. "When we took the first bomb hit, the main power went out, but your backup cables kept my guns firing." Walters answered, "We knew boys would depend on our work. Every weld, every wire, every patch, we pictured someone's son needing it to work." Admiral Nimitz's judgment. After the war, Admiral Nimitz gave the final judgment. The 3 days Yorktown spent in dry dock may have been the most important 3 days of the Pacific War. Not because of the repair itself, though it was amazing, but because of what it stood for. American democracy called to action. American workers dedicated, American industry set loose. The Japanese came to Midway expecting to fight the America they pictured, slow, soft, and divided. Instead, they met the America that was real, fast, tough, and united. Yorktown was the proof. A ship they knew they had crippled showed up whole. When Japanese pilots saw Yorktown's planes over their carriers, they saw more than planes. They saw American will made real. They saw the future. A world where industrial power and human drive could beat any challenge. The workers who fixed Yorktown didn't just fix a ship. They showed a national spirit that would win the war. In those 3 days, Pearl Harbor's workers proved that in America, impossible was just another way of saying not yet done. The numbers that spell victory. The final count shows the mathematical truth. Cost, 72 hours of work, 2,400 workers, 2.2 million in supplies, 3 days taken from other projects. Return, 1 Japanese carrier for sure sunk by Yorktown's planes. 2 Japanese attacks soaked up, 322 Japanese planes destroyed in the battle, 3,057 Japanese men killed. Japanese ability to attack ended for good. Proof. American repair ability was 3,000% better than Japanese guesses. The quick repair idea was proven right. New damage control standards were created. It was an inspiration for faster work all through American industry, the lasting question for the Japanese. One question was left. How did the Americans know to fix Yorktown so fast? How did they know Midway would happen on June 4th? The answer, that American code breakers were reading Japanese messages as they were sent, wouldn't come out for decades. But even without knowing about the code breaking, the presence of Yorktown at just the right moment should have told them everything. The Americans knew their plans completely. Modern lesson. Today's U.S. Navy still teaches the Yorktown lesson. Speed is more important than perfection. Adapting beats planning. The enemy won't wait for perfect repairs. Modern damage control thinking, with its focus on quick recovery over full repair, comes straight from Yorktown's 72 hours in dry dock. Every sailor learns the story. Every damage controlman knows the standard, Captain Buckmaster's summary. Yorktown's commander gave maybe the best summary. The Japanese expected us to follow rules. They're rules about how long repairs should take. But we're Americans. We don't follow rules. We make them up as we go. Our rule was simple. Yorktown fights at Midway. Those workers at Pearl Harbor didn't work a miracle. They showed American industrial democracy at work. Messy, made up on the spot, not perfect but unstoppable. They fixed my ship any way they could. It wasn't pretty. It wasn't proper, but it was ready. When we sailed on May 30th, Yorktown wasn't the ship she'd been before Coral Sea. She was something new. Part original, part improvisation, part determination. She was America itself, damaged but not beaten, patched but not broken, ready to fight. The Japanese at Midway met more than 3 carriers. They met American will turned into steel. And it all started with 72 hours in a dry dock when impossible was bound to happen. Conclusion. The lesson of 3 days. USS Yorktown lies 16,650 feet below the Pacific's surface, found by Robert Ballard in 1998. She sits upright, her battle damage still able to be seen. The Pearl Harbor repairs can still be seen. Welded plates, patched holes, ugly but working fixes that got her to Midway. At Pearl Harbor, a plaque at Dry Dock Number 1 says, "Here in 72 hours, American workers did the impossible, repairing USS Yorktown for the Battle of Midway." Their labor changed history. The Japanese had woken a sleeping giant at Pearl Harbor. At Midway, they found out what that giant could do when fully awake. Fix the impossible, do the unthinkable, show up where no one expected. Lieutenant Commander Tanabe, who gave Yorktown's final blow, understood too late what he had faced. We thought we were fighting ships and planes. We were actually fighting an idea that nothing is impossible for those who refuse to accept impossibility. The workers who did the impossible repair stayed mostly unknown. No medals for welding, no credit for laying cable, no glory for patching steel. They went back to their work fixing other ships, winning the war one repair at a time. But their 72 hours changed history. In proving Yorktown could be fixed in 3 days, they proved America could do anything. In sending a patched carrier to Midway, they sent a message to the world. American industrial power wasn't just about making things. It was about will, new ideas, and the absolute refusal to accept being beaten. Yorktown's appearance at Midway was more than a battle surprise. It was proof that in the storehouse of democracy, the most powerful weapon wasn't the bomb or the bullet. It was the American worker with a welding torch and 3 days to do the impossible. And they did it. The story of USS Yorktown's return stands as a timeless proof of what free people can do when they work together for a common goal. In just 72 hours, American workers didn't just fix a ship. They showed that determination and cleverness could beat any problem, that function mattered more than looks, that tomorrow's fight mattered more than yesterday's rules. The Japanese commanders, who showed shock at seeing Yorktown at Midway, saw more than one repaired ship. They saw the future, a world where industrial democracy would win over a military ruling class, where problem-solving would beat rigid thinking, where workers choosing to give their all would beat workers forced to obey. Yorktown went to the bottom on June 7, 1942, but what she stood for rose from those waters and shaped the rest of the war. Every quick repair, every impossible deadline met, every problem solved with new ideas instead of old rules. All traced back to those 3 days in May when 1,400 American workers proved that impossible was just the starting point. The ghost ship that haunted Japanese pilots at Midway wasn't from another world. It was something much more powerful, proof that American democracy, fully in action, could do anything. The workers didn't know they were making history. They only knew they had a job to do and 3 days to do it. In those 3 days, they didn't just fix a carrier. They proved a principle that would carry America through the war and after, that free people working with a common goal can do the impossible. That principle, welded into steel and sent to sea, helped turn the tide of history at Midway. It is still America's secret weapon, not advanced technology or huge resources, but the simple belief that any problem can be solved if you work hard enough, smart enough, and fast enough. The Japanese never understood this until it was too late. They measured time in months, while Americans measured it in hours. They chased perfection while Americans chased victory. They followed procedures while Americans followed what was needed. In the end, 3 days in a dry dock decided the fate of the Pacific. 3 days that proved the storehouse of democracy's greatest weapon was not the storehouse or the democracy alone, but the two together. Free workers choosing to do the impossible and then doing it.